I'm Max Lopez. This is a Blue Wave. We got a new Reuters poll that shows that Kamala Harris has opened up a 7 point lead on the former president, Donald Trump, making this one of the largest gaps in support for Harris and Trump that we have seen in any poll come out since Harris took over the top of the ticket for Joe Biden. So let's look at this article here real quick from Reuters that says Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris leads Republican Donald Trump 47 to 40% in the race to win the November 5th U.S. presidential election. Sorry, my thing's not switching over. There it is. Harris has a lead of 6 percentage points based on unrounded figures. The Democrats' lead was slightly higher than her 5 point advantage over Trump in a September 11th to 12th Reuters poll. The latest poll had a margin of error of about 4 percentage points, meaning that Harris's lead here falls at least 3 points outside of the margin of error, indicating a clear favoring of Harris as the presidential candidate by the majority of Americans. Now, why is this? Donald Trump has failed to capitalize on many political advantages that the Republicans had, not only in the 2022 midterms, but now in this presidential election. Back in 2022, there was many people that were predicting a red wave was going to happen and that the Democrats were going to lose control of the Senate and that we were going to lose control of the Republicans were going to keep control of the House and that we were going to lose control of the White House in 2024 based on how Americans were feeling about the Russian-Ukraine war, based on they were feeling about gas prices and inflation, and based on a kind of perceived lack of leadership and lack of cognitive ability from Biden. But none of that came to fruition, and it was mainly because of Donald Trump's hand-picked candidates, such as Herschel Walker in Georgia for the Senate, and Dr. Oz in the Senate in Pennsylvania, that led to Republicans not capturing and taking advantage of the opportunity they had in 2022. And now what we're finding is a Donald Trump out there on the campaign trail this time around in 2024 that has had a complete lack of ability to focus in on any particular talking point for long enough of a time for it to register in the minds of Americans. We've heard them slam the table about immigration and about the border. But the thing is that there's only a certain amount of people who are voting, heading into the ballot box with the border at the top of their mind. And there are many other topics that Americans consider to be much more important than immigration. So Donald Trump has really failed to create any sort of economic message or any sort of populist message that propelled him to victory in 2016. And his campaign has become one of his own grievances, his own battles, his own bones to pick that he has with the Democratic Party, politics in America, and the world at large. And as more and more people are tuning into this race, undecided voters, people who are low information voters, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but there are many quite low information voters out there in this country who get majority of their news from social media or from their friends and family. And as people begin to and continue to tune in to this election, I can't help but sit here and think, what is it that somebody is turning to the Republicans and MAGA and Trumpism at this point for? there's not too much places that Trump has to go to gain support from any particular group of voters, right? He has his immigration talking points, and he's riled up his supporters into a frenzy in wanting to deport immigrants. Just yesterday or 2 days ago, they were chanting, send them back at one of his rallies. But if you're somebody who's not all wrapped up into that, into MAGA world, into the terminally online world that MAGA spreads a lot of their talking points around on, what is it you're going to Trump's camp for? He hasn't offered anything to the average person out there that would appeal them to his campaign. And when you look at, in fact, many of the things that Trump put into place when he was president, the most consequential legislation that was passed was Donald Trump's tax bill, that was essentially Mitch McConnell's child anyhow, and Donald Trump just basically put his stamp on it. He didn't really come up with it in the first place, but what it did was it gave 83% of the benefits of the tax benefits went to the 1% richest people in this country, okay? And you look at the mishandling of COVID-19, you look at how badly our country was ravaged by COVID, right? We only have about 4% of the world's population, but we have 16% of the world's COVID deaths, which is totally out of whack with the rest of the world. And you look at people who lost loved ones, you look at people who lost economic opportunity by Trump's mishandling of the virus. Trump has just really, really not dialed in on any one particular populist message. And even when he is trying to give his remarks and give his bread and butter talks about immigration and the economy, he typically veers off into these long-winded tangents that he's described as, oh, that's just my genius at work, when I don't think a lot of people are understanding what he's saying and aren't getting his point. And people have, in fact, been leaving his rallies early. And there's just been a kind of a lack of engagement and a lack of excitement about Donald Trump in the right and in this country at large that was there in 2016 that led to him winning. Trump has failed to recapture that lightning in a bottle, and it seems as if he's running out of time to really build a message that resonates with the vast majority of American people. And his policy and the things, the effects that his administration has had on this country, it seems like the vast majority of people are turned off by his politics, are turned off by his talking points, are turned off by restricting rights away from people. And as we get closer and closer and closer to election day, it would not be surprising to me at all that this race gets even further and further away from Trump. And really, Trump was totally putting all of his eggs in the basket of the American people not turning out to support Joe Biden because of a perceived lack of his cognitive ability. And you could imagine that he is extremely, extremely frustrated with not being able to levy that line of attack against Kamala Harris, who is, by all measures, a much better public speaker and is much more coherent in her delivery of the Democratic talking points. And you just imagine that this is Donald Trump's worst nightmare, is what's happening right now in this election. And we still have quite a ways to go, and we all know that there's always some sort of October surprise, right? Something that really shakes up the race in its final days and weeks. In 2016, it was James Comey reopening the investigation into Hillary Clinton's email server in regards to the attack on an embassy in Benghazi that led to the death of 4 Americans working at the embassy. And that ultimately had a huge impact on the election. Perhaps there's something that could tip the scales back in Donald Trump's favor in the final days and weeks leading into the election. Could it have something to do with Netanyahu and Israel and the Biden administration's failure to decouple itself from the carnage and bloodshed that Netanyahu has bestowed upon the world and the people of Gaza? It could, but when you look at these polls and we're getting closer and closer and they're getting further and further apart, as that article pointed out, Trump's lead was just about, Harris's lead was about 4 or 5 points directly after the debate. Now we're seeing it widen to 7 points in an election that's going to be decided by a few handfuls of tens of thousands of votes in Georgia, in Pennsylvania, in North Carolina, in Arizona. 1 or 2 percentage points in this day and age, an election that's going to be this close is a huge, huge indicator that Donald Trump's messaging and Donald Trump's campaign is failing to recapture the magic, if you will, that propelled him to victory in 2016. And in fact, the momentum this time around is favoring Kamala Harris and the Democrats. And I'm very excited about this election. We have a lot of work to do. We have to not get ahead of ourselves here and not take anything for granted at all, because really this race should be further apart than it is now. I think 7 points is, when you look at the Harris campaign and the Trump campaign, why is it even that close? Well, we kind of know why, right? But we can't take anything for granted. We have to all go out and vote on election day, and we got to make sure that we put this one away and put Donald Trump and Trumpism and MAGA away, hopefully for good, and we can move on with getting past this terrible era of our politics in this country. But it's going to take a lot of work, and 7 points is, we should not feel comfortable with that whatsoever. But the signs are pointing to Americans generally being over Donald Trump and being over Trumpism. And that's huge. That's huge, because we know the consequences of what Donald Trump being elected again are, and there's absolutely no chance we can take with electing Donald Trump again, because we might not have elections in this country afterwards in the way that we're used to having them, and our country may fundamentally change its identity so far away from something that we consider to be America and American values that we turn into a country that looks much more like Russia or another authoritarian-led country. So the stakes are too high to stay home or to get comfortable or complacent with this 7-point lead, but I think it's okay. We can feel excited about people looking at this race and generally being turned off by Donald Trump, and the excitement being with Harris. It's a very good sign, and I'm excited for the election, and we just need to all get out there and vote and make sure Donald Trump is put away once and for all. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, share this video with someone who's into politics. It helps YouTube take my channel more seriously and get the word out to more and more people. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be sure to catch you in the next one, and have a great rest of your day. Peace.